Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head down to Belgium once again for the first time in what feels like a good little while. So we're going to return to a brewery that has featured on the channel twice before. The two beers that I've reviewed from these guys are very nice. They're very famous beers in fact actually, and after I reviewed those I thought I wasn't going to be able to do anything else from them, but thankfully they've released something else. So glad to be able to review it for you here on the channel. Fingers crossed it's another good beer, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review we are going to go to Westmalle, which is near Antwerp down in Belgium, and we're having a look at another beer from Brouwerij Trappisten van Westmalle. So yeah, this one is the Westmalle Trappist Extra. It comes in at 4.8% ABV, and this one is a Patters beer. So a Patters beer is essentially the beer that the monks used to drink themselves in the Trappist abbeys, and they're kind of, from what I remember, they're just, kind of more, slightly more yeasty versions of Belgian blondes actually. They're almost kind of like that in terms of their flavour composition and things, although the brewing, of course, might be technically quite different. But yeah, like I said, this is my third beer from the Westmalle Trappists. We've reviewed the triple and the double before. Probably my favourite out of the two would be the triple, but when it comes to the Belgian Abbey beers, as you'll know if you've watched the channel before, my favourites tend to be the triples and the quadruples. I do enjoy a good Belgian blonde as well. Double is a style that I feel I need to explore a little bit more. But yeah, really cool to be able to review a Trappist Patters beer for you here on the channel, I believe for the first time. So as I said earlier, hopefully it's another good one. I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this beer. So let's crack on then. As always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery, and since it's a Trappist beer, we'll talk about the Abbey as well. So if you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from the Trappist Brewery at Westmalle as well, and we will add more to that in the future if they release more beers. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Belgian beers I've reviewed for you. That's being added to whenever I get the opportunity, and as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then, to tell you a little bit about the brewery and the Abbey at Westmalle then. So the Westmalle Brewery, as I've mentioned to you already, is attached to the Westmalle Abbey in Westmalle, Belgium, to the northeast of Antwerp, in the kind of northeast of the country, if you like. It's actually quite close to the Dutch border. But the Trappist Abbey is officially known as Abdij onze Lieve Vrouw het Heilig Hart van Jezus. Apologies for any bad pronunciations there. And it was founded on the 6th of June 1794. However, the Abbey community was not elevated to Trappist status until the 22nd of April 1836. And this Abbey is part of the Order of the Cistercians of Strict Observance. Now, I'm not too up to date on what the exact, conditions are of the Cistercians and things like this, but yeah, that's the order that they are part of. But the Abbey was founded by a group of monks that had been taking refuge in Switzerland after the French Revolution, and Augustinus de Lestrange du Bosc actually guided many monks from Switzerland to resettle abroad, and the group that founded Westmalle were actually intended to go to Canada, but on passing through Flanders to leave, they were invited to found a monastery by Cornelius Franciscus de Nelis, and through him the monks were given a small farm called Nooit Rust, which translates into English as Never Rest, and it was this that became the original priory, and this was led by Arsenius Durand and composed 10 monks. Unfortunately though, very quickly after this, the monks had to flee to Münster in North Rhine-Westphalia, present-day Germany, and they founded a monastery near Darfield, and this came after the French troops invaded the Austrian Netherlands, so they didn't have much luck for their first couple of years. But later on in 1802, 12 monks returned to Westmalle, and they received support from many locals to help the priory grow, and after the defeat of Napoleon in 1814, the community began to properly prosper. So in the 1830s, having struggled financially a little bit, they began to create businesses that would fund the community, such as a guest house and a print shop. And it was then in 1836 that the abbey was that the priory, I should say, was granted the status of abbey by Pope Gregory XVI and Archbishop Engelbert Sterck. But the first abbot, Martinus Dom, decided early on that the abbey was going to brew its own beer. So in their tenants, they were allowed to drink the popular local beverage, but the monks didn't want to have to buy their own beer, and so they decided that they were going to brew their own. But the first batch was brewed between August and December of 1836, and it was served with lunch that year. But the pioneering brewers were Father Bonaventure Hermans and Abericius Kemps, if I'm pronouncing their name correctly, probably not, but the original beer was a light brown beer with quite a sweet taste. But by 1856, the monks had prepared their second beer, a dark brown beer, which is considered by many to be the first double. But the recipe they now use from the double was derived from a recipe first used in 1926, and the first sales of beers from the abbey to the locals began in 1856. That same year, the brewery was enlarged and rebuilt following the example set by the Trappist of Forges, which is Chimay of course, and Father Ignatius van Ham joined the brewing team. But over the years, Westmalle provided support to various other Trappist communities, including Achel and St Sixtus, and I think they founded a couple of other communities as well, come to think of it. But another new brewery was built in 1933, and then the following year the brewery brewed a strong pale ale at 9.5%, and then they gave it the name Triple, and this is the first modern use of the term triple. So the Westmalle Triple was the first one, but the brewery was once again remodeled in 1991, and it now has a yearly capacity of 120,000 hectolitres. But the current brewery staff are 22 monks and 40 outside staff, and they produce a few different beers. Mainly it's the double and the triple, of course, but they also have this one now, the extra, and I'm guessing they might do another one. I would love to see Westmalle have a go at doing a quadruple. That would be really interesting, but how likely they are to do that, I honestly don't know. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about the Brouwerij Trappist van Westmalle. As I say, I do apologise for any bad pronunciations in this video. It's quite hard to get the Dutch and French pronunciations totally correct when you're doing these things. But yeah, I think that is a nice kind of summary of their history. It's always cool to talk a little bit more in depth about the history of these Trappist breweries. But yeah, if you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram as well. They do have their social media there that you can follow. You can have a look at the Untappd pages as well if you want to have a little look at more in depth about the ratings that these beers and things have. But yeah, let's crack on then and have a little look at this beer itself. So just a little quick look at the artwork before we open it up. As you can see, I think the artwork on this one is slightly different to what we've had from Westmalle before. But yeah, still looks pretty good, of course. You can see that is also on the bottle cap there. So I'll need to keep this bottle cap because this is the first time that I've come across this beer, and you can see it does have the nice kind of ring around the neck of the bottle as well. But yeah, 330ml bottle, this one. We got this beer here in Sweden as part of one of the Tillfälligt temporary assortments, and I can't remember the exact date that this one was released, but yeah, we got it a couple of months after it was originally released. But yeah, let's get this guy out then and we'll get on with the taste, and I'm very, very curious to see what this beer has in store for us. Yeah, and hopefully this isn't my last Westmalle review. I do hope they release a couple of other beers at some point. As I say, a quadruple would be an interesting one from these guys. And a blonde maybe as well, but then maybe a blonde's a bit pointless if they have this one. We'll figure that out. But yeah, let's just pour the last little bit of this quite delicately then. Strange to think this is my first Patters beer that I'm reviewing for you here on the channel actually. But yeah, let me just line that up once again, and there we are. So, as you can see, and as we kind of expected, this beer has poured a lovely kind of bright golden yellow colour. If we shine the light through this, it is, you know, it's, yeah, you can't really see much more than this. It's a lovely kind of bright yellow golden straw colour, this one. Kind of similar to like a Munich Helles or something like this. A lovely kind of bright yellow colour, a bit of a natural kind of haze to it. You can see that the beer is poured with a little bit over a finger of a frothy, I would say perfect white head, one or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, and a few little ones just going up towards the bottom of the glass there too. You can see a few little bits. If I wipe the condensation away, you can see a few little bits of kind of particle floating around in this one. There's a little bit of particulate matter in there, just suspended and floating around. But yeah, it looks very, very nice, this one, like a kind of hazy Belgian blonde, I guess we could say. So yeah, nothing particularly surprising about the appearance of this one. Certainly looks the part. So let's take a closer look at the aroma then and see how we get on with this. This could be quite cool. Yeah. You know, it comes across like a sort of Belgian pale ale in a sense rather than a blonde. I think the pale ales tend to be a little bit more kind of hoppy than the blondes actually. So this one definitely has a wee bit more hop character to it, I think. But it does come across very, very nicely. And it's, you know, the Belgian beers are always very yeasty forward, if you like. They're always yeast forward. But yeah, it does smell very nice. So let's try and, the first impression of this one is that it comes off, I mean, it comes across more bready than yeasty in a sense. You do get a bit of a yeasty quality in there, but the breadiness I think does take the fore in this one, and you've got some lovely kind of almost noble hoppy elements out of it. But let's try and break the aroma down for you a little bit more before we actually taste it. Pardon me. So yeah, in terms of the the backbone of this beer then, so this one, you can smell a little bit of an almost crackery base to this beer. So there's a little bit of a crackery sort of thing there, a little bit of a woody kind of element to it, and you've also got a nice kind of wholemealy, brown bready sort of thing there. But that's kind of a light sort of sprinkling. The bready notes don't come across as overly thick in a sense in that base of the beer. It is a little bit more crackery and a little bit more kind of slightly woody in the base. But yeah, sitting on top of that, you can smell the kind of breadiness from the yeast, and it almost smells as if at the very back of the nose, it's almost as if you're getting a little bit of like a wheaty type bitiness out of it, but I'm pretty sure this beer doesn't contain wheat. It's kind of uncommon, I think, for these kind of beers to contain wheat like that. But yeah, you do get a lot, as I say, you get a nice kind of, from the yeast you're getting a really kind of bright fresh bread. It comes across as quite crisp in a sense on the nose. So yeah, at the back of the nose you can smell that sort of fluffy, fresh, white bready character out of it. There's a good little element of bread crust in this beer as well. And I think, you know, and I think there's a wee bit of a kind of brown sugary element to this one, but very, very slight. It's almost like a kind of biscuity sort of thing, like a McVitie's digestive biscuit type quality that you get out of this one. Very, very much like that. So yeah, a little bit of a kind of grainy, sweet, biscuity type thing to this beer as well. It's quite a straight shooting beer in a lot of ways, but it does work very nicely. I mean, these beers are definitely not going to give you the same level of complexity that you'll get from a triple or a quadruple, obviously, but you know, they can still be really, really nice. The more that I smell of this beer, I start to get a little bit of that kind of banana-y, clovey type thing that you can often get from Belgian yeasts. That starts to come out a little bit more. But like I say, backbone of the beer, kind of crackery and slightly woody in the backbone, some nice kind of smooth wholemealy bready notes. At the back of the nose there's almost like a little touch of a kind of wheaty bitiness, some fresh crisp white bread, a bit of bread crust, wee bit of McVitie's digestive biscuit, and as I say, there's a wee bit of a there is a little bit of a kind of clovey, banana-y type thing comes out of this one. So yeah, definitely worth keeping that in mind. So it smells nice. It does become a little bit more kind of sweet in a sense the more that you smell of this beer. It kind of mellows out a little bit, let's just say. But yeah, the aroma of that one is pretty nice on the malty yeasty side of things. So on the hoppy, in regards to the hoppy part of the beer, it comes across as quite noble in a sense. I'd be curious to know what hops they're using in this one. But yeah, so there's a tiny little bit of earthiness in there, but you've got quite a bright floral aromaticity. You know, the type of hops that they would use in this, I'm guessing that it would be something like, you know, Slovenian Styrian Goldings, Czech Sats, Žatec, or, you know, something like the German Hallertauer Tettnangers, you know, maybe even something slightly higher alpha acid from Germany, like, you know, Pearl or something like this, or even, I think Hercules is probably a bit too far. But yeah, it's one of the noble type hops that are in this. And it does come across as quite bright in a sense, so I wonder if it's potentially, you know, a Hallertauer or a Tettnanger that's in here. The Belgians, of course, do have their own hops which come across somewhere in between the German and the English ones. They've got a little bit more of the earthy herbal thing that you would expect of English hops, but they've got the brightness of the German hops. But yeah, the earthiness in this one is quite smooth in a sense, and you've got a lovely kind of bright floral aromaticity to this beer. It's not spicy, it's just lovely and bright, but you've also got a little bit of a kind of grassy, zesty kind of thing out of this one. So yeah, I do like how this beer goes about its business on the hoppy side of things. Nice bright green component, and that's what you want from a beer that's intended to be kind of sessionable almost. I'm not sure how much the Belgian monks would have drunk with their meals, of course, but yeah, that's another story. But on the fruity side of things, then I think we've covered the green component. Fruity part of the beer, it's kind of what you'd expect. You've got a little bit of an apricot-y quality to this one, a kind of smooth apricot-y note in there. There's a wee bit of a kind of lemon limey type quality in there, but not too much actually. It's quite light in a sense, and maybe a tiny wee hint of, maybe a tiny wee hint of gooseberry and pear or something like this. So yeah, I think the main fruity components for me would be apricot, little touch of pear, and maybe a wee bit of gooseberry. But as I say, you can still smell some of the sweeter banana-y elements coming out of this one the further into it that you go. But yeah, I do like how everything goes together in this one. So yeah, the way that this beer goes together is kind of expected, but it goes about its business very, very well, I would say. So I think it is about time for us to crack into this one then. So yeah, take a bit of time to ponder over the aroma, as I always say. That's half the experience with craft beers and whiskies and stuff, but let's taste this one now. So this one is the Westmalle Trappist Extra, coming in at 4.8% ABV, a Patters beer from the Westmalle Abbey near Antwerp down in Belgium. Let's get stuck into this one. Slange, skål, cheers, santé, prost. Yeah, that is quite nice actually. Very straight shooting beer in a lot of ways, but again, it does the job. So yeah, if you want a kind of sessionable Trappist beer, this is your man. This is your man. So, where to start? Yeah, on the it's actually, in some ways, it's actually kind of what you would expect from the aroma. It's one of these beers where the flavour translates to the aroma very well, actually. Yeah, so straight away across the middle third of your palate then, you can feel a little bit of a sort of crackery type thing. That forms the base, and it does get a little bit more grainy the further that you go into the aftertaste, but there's a very light and very smooth kind of light sort of crisp white bready layer there that goes right across the middle of your palate as well. If we're talking middle third of your palate, you can feel that on the front half of that middle third of your palate you get a little bit of a kind of woody note underneath. You get a little bit of that in there, and yeah, I like how that I do like how that goes about its business for sure. So yeah, middle third of your palate, kind of crisp, crackery base in the front half of the middle third of your palate, one or two little woody undertones in there. Then on top of that you get a nice smooth, crisp white bready element in there, and then a little bit of a more kind of bread crusty element sitting on top of that. But yeah, I do like how that goes together in this beer. The backbone of this beer is quite nice. What you'll also notice is that the beer kind of thickens out a wee bit the further that you go into the aftertaste. So you will start to get a few on the back half of that middle third of your palate. You will start to develop a few. You will start to develop a few kind of more yeasty elements coming out of the beer. So I do like that. A nice kind of yeasty, smooth backbone to it, so that's very, very nice. And then you've also got a wee bit of a kind of clovey, spicy sort of thing in there as well, which is good. So a wee bit of that banana clovey spice sitting on the back half of that middle third of your tongue, but in the dead centre of your palate, it's almost like you've got a little circle there, and that's where you get a wee bit of the kind of brown sugary biscuity notes there. So you can feel there's a sort of oily kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity base there. So you can feel that slightly oily character, and then it sort of concentrates as you go towards the dead centre of your palate, which I really like. So yeah, you have got a little bit more of a kind of concentration of that in the very dead centre of your palate. But as you move out towards the edge of the palate there, you start to get more of a kind of biscuity, as I say, McVitie's digestive sort of thing. It does develop a little bit more kind of graininess from the sweet biscuity elements out of the beer. So yeah, I like how that pieces together. Yeah, the kind of it all goes together really nicely in that sense. Yeah, this one, I think it really hits the spot. Actually, it really does hit the spot. It is kind of like a, as I say, like a Belgian blonde, but the yeasty components are a little bit more prominent, if you like, and I think that works for it quite well. But yeah, I think that's the middle third of your palate covered quite well in this one. So let's focus on the back third of your palate then. So you can feel when you go into the back third of your palate, and that border region between middle third and back third of your palate, there's a little bit of a bready build up again. There's a bit of a bread crusty kind of thing, and then the base of that back third of your palate again, it's got a kind of it's got a bit of a bready kind of bread crusty backbone in there, and on top of that you can feel a little bit of the kind of smoothness from the yeast as well, and a few of the banana clovey type elements, and on top of that you can feel this the more airy elements of the yeasty flavour. So you can feel the flavour is a little bit taller in there, so the flavour gets a little bit taller on top of that, and it's quite an airy sort of white bready sort of thing, but there's a few elements of bread crust mixed in with that as well. So when you start at the back of your palate, the flavour is kind of like this. So yeah, the flavour starts off tall like that, it condenses down, then as you go into the middle third of your palate it's a little bit more sort of squashed together in a sense. So yeah, it's interesting how that side of the beer pieces together, but I think that covers the yeasty and kind of malty side of this beer, if you like. It's kind of what you would expect, to be honest, a kind of sessionable beer, this one, basically a more kind of yeasty version of a Belgian blonde, I would say. So yeah, I like it. I do wonder with these ones if they do add a little bit of brew sugar to them as well, because the sweetness in this is quite nice. And one of the things that they often do, of course, with triples and quadruples, I'm not sure about doubles, I think they do it with doubles as well actually, but I wonder with this beer if they do add a little bit of a kind of brew sugar to them, or a little bit of candy sugar or something to give you the sweetness, because the thing that you'll notice with the Belgian beers, quite often they're high alcohol percentages, but they've got nowhere near the same thickness in the mouthfeel as like imperial stouts and all the other kind of craft beers that you'll come across. So that tells you two things. It tells you the wort boil is not very long, and it also tells you that the malt bit, that the carbonation, the level of kind of crisp carbonation you'll get out of these comes from a fermentation from an adjunct. So yeah, it's interesting with that, because I do wonder with this if there is a little bit of a brew sugar added into this one. I think the sweetness in this beer might not necessarily be from the addition of like a Pilsner malt or a Carapils or something like that. So that's worth noting with this beer as well. I do think there might be, I've got a suspicion there might be a little bit of a brew sugar added into this one. But let's focus on the hoppy side of the beer then. So back corners of the palate, you've got a nice little bit of earthiness there. As you move further forward, it does develop a little bit of herbal character. That makes me wonder, potentially there could have been like a local Belgian hop put in this. But as you move towards the kind of front corners of the palate, you develop a nice bright floral aromaticity. I wouldn't describe it as I wouldn't describe it as spicy or anything like that. I would describe it more as a kind of bright floral note. But then round the front curve of the palate, it's definitely lighter and more grassy in a sense. You do get a little bit of that kind of zestiness off the front of the palate as well, which is quite nice. But yeah, a nice kind of deep floral quality in there, and a bit of a kind of zestiness. So yeah, I like how this how this one goes together in that sense. But yeah, that covers the hoppy side of things. So fruity part of the beer then. Border region between front third and middle third of your palate. Again, you get a little bit of a bready build-up in there and a wee bit of grain. Then the base of that front third of your palate is a sort of smooth, bready kind of thing. And again, you get a wee bit of the kind of smoothness from the sort of clovey, banana-y side of the yeast. On top of that, you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy, fruity characters roll their way out of the beer. So yeah, on the back half of that front third of your palate, you get a nice little touch of an apricot-y note out of this one. So yeah, there was a nice little bit of a kind of apricot-y quality on the back there, and as you move further forward, you can feel it does intensify a little bit, and as you move into the front half of that front third of your tongue, it's got a wee bit of a kind of limey undertone to it. There is a wee bit of that in there. There's a wee bit of an oily gooseberry comes out the further you go into the aftertaste, but yeah, for me, front half of that front third of your palate, yeah, a bit of lime, maybe a touch of lemon in there, and then a more oily gooseberry sitting underneath. But you've also got a more zesty kind of character coming off it as well, on the very tip of the tongue. So just behind the tip of the tongue, you're starting to get those big grassy esters there, and it's just got a wee bit of zest to it. But yeah, I think it goes together really nicely in that sense. The fruity side of the beer, obviously not as complex as you're going to get from the triple, right enough, but yeah, it does the job. This is a sessionable beer, and it gives you everything you would want. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for the sort of tasting section, if you like, the mouthfeel of the beer. This one, you know, it's kind of top end of light bodied, bottom end of mid bodied. It sits in that area of the spectrum. The carbonation is fairly crisp, of course. That's a kind of inherent trait that you get with Belgian beers, as I say, because they add a little bit of a brew sugar to them to give them the sweetness. The sweetness doesn't usually come from the malty side of things, at least as far as I'm aware. Correct me on that if I'm wrong. But yeah, the malty, yeasty kind of thing in this beer works really nicely. Your kind of middle of your palate is very, very smooth with just a little touch of sweetness on top. You've got a little bit of bitterness out of this beer. I don't think this one's any more than 25 or 30 IBUs. 30 might even be a little bit too high. 25 seems a bit more kind of reasonable for this one, and you've got a little touch of zestiness in there as well. And the fruits for me are quite light, wet, and very slightly oily as well. So yeah, just pay attention to that, and just pay attention to that in this beer. It comes across really nicely. So yeah, an interesting one. This my first Patters beer review on the channel, and I've quite enjoyed this. So I need to see which of the other Trappist breweries have Patters beers, if any. But like we say, the whole point of the Patters beer is that this is the one that the monks would drink themselves. So yeah, we can leave it there. So yeah, this one was the Westmalle Trappist Extra from the Brouwerij Trappisten van Westmalle near Antwerp in Belgium. Really interesting to review this one. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. I certainly enjoyed tasting this beer, and yeah, we'll need to leave it there. But thank you again for watching. Check out all my other reviews. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers out of the Westmalle are. Do give me some other Patters beer recommendations as well. I'd love to explore this style a little bit more. The only other one I can think of is the St. Bernardus, actually. But let me know what other breweries have Patters beer in their inventories. But yeah, thank you again for watching. Check out my social media, check out Westmalle, of course, and I'll see you guys, pardon me, in the next one. Slàinte, Skål, cheers, and see you guys in the next review.